Hello and welcome everybody to our podcast. Welcome to Livingston. My name is Don Putkela.
And I'm Angela Putkela, and we're with the Putkela Real Estate Professionals.
Yep, the Putkela Group Real Estate Professionals.
There we go.
And just welcome everybody to our podcast today. On our podcast, we talk to local businesses, but sometimes we take a step back and we talk about real estate because we are realtors. And today is one of those days where we decided to spend an episode just talking about real estate a little bit here. Yeah, so today we wanted to focus on the selling process. You know, when we sit down with buyers or sellers, a lot of times we find that, you know, we need to talk them through the process, walk them through the process. And if you're a first-time seller or you haven't sold in a long time, it can be a pretty unknown task or an unknown that you're going into, like just what all the steps of the process are.
Right, exactly. Because it just tends to happen so fast, and if you don't know what's coming up, then that can certainly cause anxiety.
Yeah, well, one of the things you like to say is you never want our clients to be surprised, right?
Exactly.
That you want to have walked them through all the turns so that when something happens, we can call them up or we can sit down to them and say, hey, remember when we talked about this? This is the next step.
Right, exactly. So they know that fork in the road that's coming and are better equipped to decide which direction to head.
Right. So when we were talking about this, I thought that where we would start off is at the very beginning. You know, someone calls us up, you know, maybe a former client or a referral or someone that just found our name, you know, or heard about us and says, I'm interested in selling my home. You know, how does that process work? Because a lot of times, you know, it can work a little bit differently. So for us, the first step is getting to understand the story of the home so far. Having a walk through the home, sitting down and meeting with the client. So I guess that's kind of where I wanted to start, is that idea of it's not just a simple, hey, I looked some stuff online. This is what your neighbor sold for. We're going to sell yours for that.
And sometimes people will reach out to us on Facebook or whatnot to say, well, how much is our house worth? It's like, well, you know, a big part of that is walking through the house and seeing it to be able to give an accurate assessment.
Right. Yeah, because there's two ways of looking at it. Sometimes I look up a home and I can find out a lot about the home before I walk through the front door, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it was sold 2 years ago. I'm able to look at some pictures. I'm able to look at what the public record says. Maybe I've been in the neighborhood a number of times, so I know which house we're talking about, right? But sometimes we don't know much about the house until we walk through the front door. Obviously, you want to ask a lot of questions and have a nice conversation over the phone and say, hey, you know, what have you done to improve the home? How many bedrooms is it? How many bathrooms is it and such? But as you said, a big part of it is walking through the home with the homeowner and getting an understanding of what the house looks like, what improvements they've done to the home, and what things still potentially need to be done.
Right. You know, to zero in on the condition of the home is a huge precursor to determining the value.
Right. And actually, one of the things we've been having lately in the past year and a half is people calling up and saying, hey, I'm thinking of selling my house next year. Can you sit down with me and tell me the things that I should or should not do in the next year?
Right.
Because so often I'm having a conversation with people and they're saying, hey, should I do this improvement? And sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes it's a bad idea, but a lot of times it's, hey, are you doing this for yourself or are you doing this to sell the home? Because if you're doing it for yourself, it's one answer. If you're doing it to sell the home, sometimes it's a different answer.
Right, exactly.
Yep. So one of the things I think that people need to be aware of when we sit down with them is we ask them important questions about, are there any assessments on the home? Are there anything that they've been paying on with the county or with the city that need to be paid off? We talk to them about fixtures a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say something? I know you have a little.
Well, I mean, we've had so many times where, you know, a seller after the fact ends up realizing, oh my goodness, that chandelier was from great grandma and we really need to take that with us. In which case, it's so important to have those conversations ahead of time because we can have them swap it out to something from Home Depot or Lowe's that, you know, will look just fine, and then you don't have to have any concerns because anything that's attached to the home stays with the home.
Right. If you have to use a tool to remove it, it means it stays with the home.
Yes.
Right. And so often, you know, it's happened 2 or 3 times is the one thing that they wanted to take with them is the main reason that people want to buy the house.
Yeah, that really does happen.
Right.
So the best strategy, and that's why meeting ahead of time is helpful, talking through those things, because if that person as the seller can identify, yes, these things I want to take with me, wonderful. Replace them before it ever gets listed, and then there's no issues.
Right. And that goes for like the water softener. Do you own the water softener? Do you rent the water softener? Is there any money that's left to be paid on the water softener that's still on a payment plan? The well and septic. When's the last time you cleaned out the septic? Have you ever had the water tested? Those sorts of things are just nice conversation pieces so we know what our starting point is.
Correct.
Right? And the homeowner knows what the starting point is, because when I ask them, do you have any fixtures that you want to take with you? Sometimes they haven't thought about that. Do you own or rent the water softener? Oh my gosh, I rent the water softener. Well, that changes things a little bit. Now we have to discuss that.
Curtains also, believe it or
Curtains
not,
are a
are
big one.
considered a fixture, right?
Yep. That bedroom set that the curtains match the
bedspread.
The bedspread.
Yes.
Right? Or in the kids' bedroom that they have, the Toy Story curtains, or.
Well, we've had Harry Potter, we've had handmade items, and those all have sentimental value. So
the shelving that Grandpa made for their grandkids' bedroom.
Right. Exactly. They're on the mantle. Those are things that homeowners frequently don't even think about. And as they're preparing for sale, that's one of the most important things.
Right. So what we do is we come out to the house, we walk through the entire home, we talk to the homeowner about each individual room, what they've put into the room, what are the best attributes of the room, what things may need to be cleaned up in the room to get it ready to list, which we'll talk about in a little while. But then we sit down with them at the kitchen table and we start talking to them about what we think their home would be worth. Because now we have a real good idea, because we physically walk through the home. We physically talk to them about the improvements that they made. We know how old the roof is. We know, what's entailed in the house. And we do a process, the exact same process that an appraiser does. And we're going to talk about appraisals a little bit later, but we give a really good idea of not only what the home is, what the value of the home could be on the open market, but what the appraiser is going to say about that value.
Right, because if the bank isn't willing to finance it, it doesn't matter that the buyer wants to spend $1 million on your home. If it's only worth what it's worth, then without the financing, unless it's a cash buyer, then they're plumb out of luck, really.
Right. So we discuss that pricing strategy with the clients, and we discuss the fact of, where do you want, what are you looking to get out of the home, right? Because the most important number isn't the number the house is listed at, it's the number that you're coming away with, right?
Correct.
So we want to keep that in mind. But one of the things we also talk about, and why that home walkthrough is so important in talking about those things, is what kind of loans are accepted. And I know that's getting a little bit in the weeds, but when I talk to homeowners and we're talking about listing in the spring, sometimes I can say, hey, listen, you need to add a railing, or you need to repaint the deck because the paint is peeling on the deck. And I want you to be able to take the maximum type of loans that you can. So to limit yourself and not be able to take a rural development loan or an FHA loan or a VA loan because you didn't do something that was simple that you could do yourself for a few $100s, and now you're limiting the pool of your buyers. That's one of the things that I think we personally go above and beyond to be able to talk about those issues and say, hey, this may be worth you taking care of, because now you're opening yourself up to more demand on your house.
Yes. And as there's more demand, we've seen in the past how that can drive prices up.
Right. And, RD, VA, FHA, those all have different criteria. And if you live in a subdivision with an HOA, or you live in a condo complex, those become real issues that we want to get in front of to know, hey, you may not be able to take an FHA loan. Right. And if you're in a certain price point and you can't take an FHA loan, then all of a sudden you're really limiting your pool of buyers. And there's things we can do to make sure that that's not an issue.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So we go through all of that, and we go through the process and talk to them about price. And then we come up with the list. We give each and every one of our clients a list of, these are the things you need to do prior to listing the home. These are the I like to say, hey, now, when the home gets ready to list, it's kind of like living in a Pottery Barn catalog, or it's, you're in a timeshare. It's this whole
Feels that
idea.
way.
It feels that way, right?
Well, and in some houses, honestly, there's been very little for us to even say. They were already ready to go. Yeah,
Right.
each person is totally different. And so it's our job to make sure that each of them get up to speed.
Right. But how important is doing that prep work to get the home listed? How big of an impact can it make sometimes?
Hugely different in terms of, whether the house sells quickly or not, whether it sells for the maximum possible value. When someone doesn't want to put the work in, don't be surprised if they don't get the dollars in the back end. It could mean a difference of thousands to even potentially tens of thousands of dollars.
Right. And, I know, and how many people out there are looking on Zillow or Realtor.com. Everyone looks at the pictures of homes, and you can tell the ones that took the time to get their house ready and the ones that didn't take their time to get the house ready, and the ones that had agents that made sure that the house was ready. There's nothing worse than seeing pictures and there's clothes on the floor, or there's dishes in the sink, or, they haven't gotten it ready.
Yes.
And that does make an impact, because remember, perception is reality, and the feeling that someone has coming through the front door is more than likely the feeling they'll have when they walk out. If they already have a negative feeling before they get out of the car, you've shot yourself in the foot. Mm-hmm. So, we look at that and everything. We give them a list. We do talk about staging, having a flow in the house, making sure that they can walk through the house, and making sure that you're highlighting the right attributes of a home.
Right. To make the room look bigger.
Right. To not, you may not use the fireplace, and you may have a couch in front of it because you never turn on the fireplace. You don't use it anymore. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't move that couch and make sure that everyone knows that there's a nice fireplace there.
Exactly.
And I've seen that more than,
Yeah, all the features that make a buyer interested in purchasing your home.
Right. So we talked about photos a little bit. What do you think about professional photos?
Oh my gosh, night and day. We used to take such wonderful photos, but then once we brought in the professionals, there was really no question. And that's a big part of how our listings sparkle and how we're able to get so many people in through the door. We also lean into them for their expertise on using drone photos when there's acreage, when there's waterfront. There's so many great resources because everybody is so visual. They are seeing it online. And to have the best of the best, to be able to make that, that home sparkle makes a difference. It's almost like the dating apps, right? You want just the right filter. You want just the right look, just to make that all those buyers fall in love with the home.
Right. And we've been doing video walkthroughs as well now, which
Yes.
I think are really impactful.
Mm-hmm. And there's been people from, out of state that are not able to see the home, and so that really has played a great role.
Right. And all that stuff we talked to before is all in prep to get to those photos. Mm-hmm. And we've had some clients where we walk in and we say, hey, we could list this house tomorrow. We could have the photographer out in 2 days and take care of it. And sometimes it's, hey, here's the things that you want to do. And we talk to them beforehand to say, hey, if you don't want to do any of this stuff, here's the price. If you do these items, here's the other price. And then it's up to them to kind of make a decision of what they want to put into the house.
Right. Makes a big difference.
Yep. So, and then from there, we're sitting down, we make sure we go through every line of the paperwork with our clients. I know that there's people out there, you go to buy a car, you're selling a house, there's so much paperwork, and you feel like you're signing.
Sign here.
Yeah, sign here, sign here. You don't understand what you're signing. It is so important to understand what you're signing and make sure you're asking questions if you don't understand it. Same thing if you're at a closing and you're in the process of buying a house, selling a house. Make sure you ask those questions if you don't know why you're signing something, or you have something specific that you want to make sure that you understand, just in terms of title or any of that stuff. But once you get the photos taken, once you get the paperwork taken care of, now we're talking about, when do we list the house?
Right.
And the big thing here is, always remember, as a seller, it's on your timeline. It's when you want to do it. Don't let anyone pressure you to say, hey, you need to list it today, or you need to wait to list it. But you should be using your realtor as a professional to give you a really good professional opinion of the pros and cons of when to list. Are you listing it as a coming soon, which we do a lot nowadays, because I really think it helps our sellers just in terms of scheduling their weekend.
Right.
If you have dogs, if you have kids, if you have things going on, if you're working from home, what better thing than to list the house on a Monday or Tuesday with showings to not start till Thursday or Friday. And by the time you get there, when those showings are. So hey, I need to get the dog out of the house between A and B.
Right. To be able to prepare in advance, it allows our sellers to be as prepared as possible.
Yep. So, and I'm running through these real quick because I just kind of want to, and I'm starting from the beginning to the end, kind of getting through the whole process. So now, we're putting the house on the market. You're getting a sign in the front yard. We're doing a ton of marketing of your house. We're putting things up on social media. A lot of times we're getting out postcards. We're talking to other agents about the house and everything.
Because the goal at this point is to get as many showings as possible. In the end, it's to sell the house for the highest possible dollars, but in order to do that, it starts with multiple showings.
Multiple showings, getting it out in front of as many people as possible at the beginning to try to spike that demand, right? To show it in its best light. So that's where you get the difference between the coming soon and the available to show right away. And then we've prepped for the showings. We've talked to our clients about this is what you can expect. We use electronic lock boxes, which are very secure. Some agents aren't using them, to each their own, but I really like the electronic ones because I get a notification when the box opens up. So I know when someone's at the house.
Exactly. And we know who's at the house.
Exactly.
Right? With just a code that someone can come, it doesn't
that
have the
code
level
doesn't change.
of security that we want for our clients.
Right. So then we talk about open houses, and everybody's different on open houses. Don't be pressured to do an open house if you don't want to do an open house. Remember that even at an open house, your agents are going to be at the house. So it's not going to be, people walking through without an agent because your agent is there. When it's showings, there will always be an agent present during the showing. But open houses can be a great tool depending on the home. Sometimes if you have a high visibility home, if there's something unique going on in the home, what a better way than to have an open house to get people to come into the home?
Here's one of my favorite things about open houses, right? And I think that it comes from some of these home shows and all of that. People think that homes are sold by way of the open house, even though, it can happen. It tends to be more on the rare side. But I've seen it get leveraged before. Someone scheduled a showing. They saw the house, they liked it, but they weren't motivated enough to make that offer. Once they see that open house is going to happen, boy, does that make them nervous. They say, you know what? We were thinking about making an offer. It looks like we need to make it now because we want to get our offer in before someone else buys it at the open house.
Exactly.
It's shocking how often that happens.
Yep. And a good open house, I like the visibility of them. But again, it's a give and take. It's, if you're not comfortable with them, then there's so many other things we can do. We do not have to have an open house. Mm-hmm. Again, our whole business is based on making our clients feel comfortable and doing things that they want done.
It's a custom fit experience.
Exactly. I've had clients that when's the open house? And then I've had clients that have been like, we're not going to do an open house, right?
Yeah, everybody's different, right? And our goal is, to sell the house for as much money as possible. And so this is part of the tools in our toolkit, right? We have so many to use.
Right.
And it just works us through the process.
Yeah. So you've gotten your house listed. You've had some showings. Maybe you've had an open house. Feedback's starting to come in. We're giving you a call saying, hey, this is what people are saying about the house. Sometimes if you have 6 or 7 people that are saying the exact same thing, then we may be having a discussion of, hey, maybe this is something that we should look at to take care of. But if everything's working out right, you've had some showings, you've had an open house, and now some offers come rolling in. Right. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think that's unique with us is we don't just send the offer over to our clients to say, hey, look it over. Tell us what you think. We sit down with the clients. We go over the offer point by point.
Oh, we explain what the offer is. They don't
Right.
have to read through all kinds of
No, but
because we've done that for them.
we've done that on the back end for them, but we're letting them know these are the specifics of the offers, and these are the things that look really good about it, or these are the things that maybe you don't like so much.
Right. Exactly. Straight up, this is what our analysis of this offer is.
Right.
And if it's a great one, then we let them know and we go through from there. Or we talk about a counter,
Right.
because in some cases buyers are making these low offers, and that's okay too. At that point in time, does a counter make sense? Does it not?
Right. And regardless of who your agent is, if you're listening to this and you're going to go through the selling process, make sure that they're talking to you about contingencies, about seller's concessions, about occupancy, about, earnest money deposits, about security deposits. All of those things make a big impact. Even who the lender is, how long it's going to take to close. All of those types of things are things that we keep in mind and we explain to our clients.
Absolutely. In the case of the lender, we frequently will call up that lender to make sure that buyer truly is qualified.
Right. So, and you get to that point, yay, you have a wonderful offer. You've signed the offer. You're under contract. Now you're on to phase 2 or phase 3 of the process, depending on what you're looking at. And a lot of your part is done as a seller, but there's so much more work to be done. We're going into the inspection now. And I'll have sellers ask me, should I be at the inspection? No, you're not going to be at the inspection. I'm not going to be at the inspection. It's the buyer's agent, and an inspector that are going to come out, walk through your house, go into your attic, check your furnace, make sure your AC is working. If you're on a well and septic, they're going to dig up the tank and look in the tank. They're going to look out in the field. They are going to examine every nook and cranny of your home and see how the home is running. Are there any unknown issues that you didn't take care of or you didn't know, so you couldn't have taken care of?
Frequently, yeah. There are things that these sellers would have taken care of had they known. But if they've been in the house for quite a while, they had no idea that there's bats in the attic,
Right.
or mold.
Yeah, and to back up a little bit, that's something that we talk about during the home walkthrough and during the listing process.
Yeah.
I talk to them about, hey, these are the potential issues I see just walking through the home, having gone through so many homes and gone through so many inspections. I have a good idea of being able to see without going into things, hey, this could be an issue, this could not be an issue. But the main things I talk to them about are, hey, these are the unknowns that we may not know about. Is there a high radon level? Is there mold in the attic? Are there bats in the attic? Do you have an issue with septic? Have you had a water test done lately? Those are things that, hey, if you knew about them, radon, yeah.
Yeah.
If you knew about them, you would take care of. But those are the things that we're looking at the inspection to see what comes out of the inspection. And sometimes nothing. Sometimes the house is perfect. Sometimes there's something, and then we negotiate that with you to come to a resolution
Based
between
on
the two sides.
what the buyer and buyer's agents have submitted to say this is what we're proposing based on what we found at the inspection.
Exactly. So we get through the inspection process. Next is going to be the appraisal. As agents, we meet with every appraiser. There are a lot of agents out there that won't meet with the appraisal, that'll just let the appraiser come out and look through the home. I think that that's a missed opportunity to, one, create a relationship, but two, and most importantly, for me to be out there and talk about the house and talk up all the attributes, talk up the improvements you've done to the home, and help justify the price that we're at. Okay, so we do a complete market analysis before the home is listed, and then we do another market analysis right the day before the appraisal, so that we can go out to the appraisal, meet with the appraiser, and have all the knowledge that he has to talk about the home and talk up its value.
Right.
Yep. So, and then that's an independent third party. The appraisal comes back. Hopefully it comes back with no repairs needed. And the value is at least what the offer price was, if not more. But as a seller, you're not going to find out what that value is because, unfortunately, you didn't pay for the appraisal. We're just happy. Sometimes we get the number, sometimes we don't. But one of the things I would say is when we're talking about repairs, that goes back to that FHA, VA, RD. those are government-backed loans, so are there repairs that were needed based on that? And if we've done our prep work beforehand, we knew what those potentially were.
Right, and took care of them in advance.
Something as simple as, hey, you have a cover missing on one of your plugs. Go out and spend the $1 to put a new cover on so you don't fail an appraisal and have to spend $85 to have them come back out for the $1 item that you could have gotten beforehand.
Exactly.
So we take care of all those things. While this is all happening, you're going to have a title company. You're going to have a title company taking care of the back end of all the issues, making sure all the paperwork's taken care of, and they're going to do a title search on your property, looking into it to see if there's any liens on the property, make sure that there's a clean chain of title. Are there any border disputes? Does the survey line up with what the actual property is? And one of the things that I wanted Angela, you to mention, because you're very good at mentioning this, the difference why an expanded policy is so important.
Right. So there's a couple different types of title policies, right? And the price difference between the average one and the best one is very, very minimal. And
Couple
even
$100 at most.
Yeah, 150 maybe 200. Title insurance, the cost of is based on the price of the home. So it does vary, but it's set by the state. So any title company, the prices will be the same. The title company that we use is First American Title, and we've had Zach on and spoken about that before. But so one of the things that's so important in my mind is that for that best title policy, if for some reason work that had been done on the home had been done without pulling a permit, well, then the buyer isn't on the hook for any of that work that was done. If the township were to come back and say, hey, you finished your basement, we don't have that on file, now you need to do X, Y, and Z, or now you need to pay all of this. If the lesser title insurance is selected, then that buyer could incur charges that seller.
Exactly. And it protects the seller for liability as well.
That's true.
Okay. So it's so worth a couple $100 for peace of mind for both parties. Border disputes. There's so many things it covers that some agents will be like, well, let's just ask for the lower coverage because it saves
$100.
Right. where the potential for something to go wrong.
Yeah.
Something to come up down the line. It's kind of like your auto insurance or your health insurance. You want the best insurance you can have, but you don't plan on using it.
Yes.
You're hoping that everything is good and you never get in a car accident. But when you get in a car accident, you don't want crap coverage.
Right.
It's the exact same thing with title insurance. Pay that couple $100 extra, have the best insurance you can have, and then hope that nothing ever comes up. I say the same thing about inspections all the time. I say the best thing that can come out of an inspection is you spent $600, $700, $800, had all these things checked, and the inspector then goes, you're buying an amazing house. Everything looks amazing. Everything looks wonderful. You don't want them to come up with something.
well, but if you do, then at least you come in with your eyes wide open.
100%.
Right?
But it's the same thing with the insurance is what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's the protection that you have, that you're checking box A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. Not just A.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, we go through that process. The title company takes care of title insurance. They're going to make sure you get a mortgage payoff. We're going to help you take care of that. If you have your home in a trust, we're going to ask you for a copy of the trust. If something comes up in title insurance that says, hey, we need X, Y, and Z, we're going to reach out to you and take care of that stuff beforehand. If you have a house that you inherited from somebody, or you just got divorced, or you're going through some kind of pre-foreclosure or something, we're going to do pre-title, where we're going to jump this title insurance and everything to the very beginning on the day that you're listing the house to make sure that we're resolving any potential issues long before. There's nothing worse than getting a phone call 4 days before closing saying, hey, I need, a copy of the trust. And we say, what do you mean there's no trust? Well, there was a trust in the past and they didn't remove it from it. So now we have to scramble.
Right, exactly. Because sometimes surprises do pop up. I mean, there's so much that can happen through that that real estate process.
Right. HOA, finding out issues on the HOA, making sure we have the HOA paperwork. You're on a private road and there's a private road agreement to get, or there's no private road agreement, but we have to let everybody know that, hey, there's no one officially taking care of the road. But, John down the block grates the road every year and he comes by and he asks for $50 from everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Taking care of all those things. So you've made it through all those processes. We call you up and say, hey, we have a clear to close. We're going to be closing in 3 or 4 days. We're going to schedule the close. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have a final walkthrough. And the buyer does. And sometimes, buyers or sellers, they don't realize that the home is going to be walked through one last time.
Yeah, usually it's like everything's getting packed up. It's all over the place. That's okay.
Yes.
That's normal.
It's more of a dotting your I and crossing your T's. Like I like to say that, the buyer is going to sign at close that he's taking the house as is based on closing date. Well, they had an opportunity to walk through the house within 72 hours of closing. They're just walking through the house and making sure that everything looks okay still.
Right. And you would want them to.
Exactly.
Right. So that way there's never any question.
Yep. So then you get to closing, and the big question we always have is, am I going to get a check or am I going to have the funds wired into my account? And our advice is to always get a check unless you are closing on another house within the next 2 to 3 days, in which case you're not getting a wire anyway. We're having the title company hold the money for you. So we always say get a check. There's so much problem with wire fraud out there. Why take any chance of it? If you don't need the money in the next 48 hours, then just get a check.
Yeah, there's been horror stories. And, and in terms of cybersecurity, it's a very big deal.
Right.
Your realtor is never going to send you wiring instructions. Okay.
Exactly.
In terms of public service announcement, if ever you have a question about the wiring instructions, if you are wiring, go check with a human. Go check with an actual person with your bank.
Call the title company and don't call the phone number off the email that you got. Get the number from your agent and call the title company. Okay? It's very simple to do. Call your bank. The last thing I wanted to talk about really quick is we didn't even talk about occupancy so much. Occupancy is a really big deal. Sometimes when you're listing your home, you haven't found your next home yet, or you know what your next home is and you're giving occupancy and you say, hey, listen, I'm not going to have the keys till, X date. That's 15 days after closing. I need occupancy of 20 days. Mm-hmm. So that's
need to be able to stay on in the house, lived in it, you're taking care of it. To negotiate those number of days, the earlier you can do that, the easier it is for all parties.
Right. So if we know going into listing the house how many days that you're going to need, then we're able to negotiate that to get that for you.
Right.
Right. But one of the things I want to talk about is your key exchange. So when you get through occupancy, you're going to have a key exchange where people are going to go in and they're going to basically exchange the keys. So whether you're giving up keys at closing or you're giving up keys a week after closing or 30 days after closing, the house has to be what's called broom swept. You need to treat the house with the respect that you've always had for it and clean the house up so it's ready for the next person. That doesn't mean hiring a professional cleaner to have it.
We have seen some people do that.
We have seen people do that.
But basically, the best rule of thumb is to treat that house the way that you would want to walk into it if you were buying it, right? If you make sure that the house looks to the standard that you would like to come into it if you were that buyer, then you'll be fine.
Right. Because, sometimes you've been in the house 2 years or you've been in the house 17 and a half years. And you want to treat that house the way, when we left the house, I wanted it to look perfect.
Yeah.
I was like, I've put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this. I have so many memories here.
There's such pride.
There's such pride. I wanted it to exhibit that when I handed over the keys.
Yeah.
So we spent extra time cleaning.
Exactly. This is true. There's nothing worse. I think it was a for sale by owner that our poor buyers were going into, and there was junk stuffed full into the junk drawers, and I felt so bad for them. So we, went through. We were kind of helping them clean a little bit, and but that's not what anybody wants to come into.
Right. And the last thing I would want to say is we went through this whole selling process rather quickly. There are so many things that can come up with buying or selling a house, and it is never a straight line from A to Z.
Correct.
There's always twists and turns. There's paths that can come off of it, things that change in people's lives, things that change in the house. We had a house where they called us up and there was like, oh my gosh, we just had a storm yesterday and a branch came through the roof.
Yeah.
Right? We've had ones where, what do I do? There's water in the basement now. Things come up and it's your agent's job to navigate that for you. So any question you have, you always pick up the phone. You always call your agent and say, okay, this is what's going on. What are we going to do about this? And, we're going to talk about the buyer side on another side of it. But my PSA is if you're going to be going out and purchasing something of large value, call up your lender, call up your agent and talk to them about it beforehand. Just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean it is a good idea.
Right. There's so many things that come up. And within that, that's why who you pick to be your realtor is so important.
Oh, 100%.
Right. You want someone with experience, someone that knows what they're doing, so that way, you're not helping them learn on the job because they're, your brothers, uncles, whatever.
Right.
And it's
the worst thing that you could hear is, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't think of that. Right? Our job is to think of all those things and to make sure to have those discussions to say, when we're going into something, I tell them A, B, and C could happen. Mm-hmm. All three of those things are okay because we have a plan moving forward, but I want to tell you what they are. Here's our best case scenario and here's our worst case scenario. So when it happens, I can say, hey, remember we talked about that. This is what we're going to do next because we already had a plan in place.
Yes, exactly. And we've seen it and we've done it and we
right.
know who to call and what to do.
We know who to call. We know who the experts are. You have an issue in your basement. Okay, I know who to call. You have a septic issue. Okay, I know who to call. Your occupancy changed and you have a job change. Okay, tell me as soon as humanly possible so I can help you take care of that because there's always a path forward, but we need as much time to figure out that path.
We're kind of the air traffic control, right?
Right.
We're navigating everything, but we're navigating it so that way the process can go as smoothly as possible for you because that's really how it should work.
Right. So, I wanted to thank you guys for listening today. This was a long one. I just looked at the timer. It's a bit longer than usual. Please reach out to us at the Putkela Group at welcometolivingston.com. If you have any questions at all, we are not pressure oriented. I love going into houses and helping them make a decision. We have gone through so many homes where in the end they say, we've decided we're not going to sell based on what we were talking about. And I'm like, good for you. You're making the right decision.
Perfect.
But give us a call in 3 or 4 years when you would like to.
The thing is, we're here to educate, right? We're here to help you make the best decision possible, whatever that may be. Because nowadays people think that they need to do it all on their own, look it all up on the internet. And that's a great resource sometimes, but there's so much to it that make the best decision for yourself.
100%. It's all about making the best decision for yourself, right? And us helping them make that decision to give them all the knowledge that they can to make that decision. Exactly.
That's why 86% of our business is referral based. People have recommended us or used us again or, that's a big part of it. So they've been happy and we're glad.
Exactly. So thank you so much for listening today. We really appreciate your time and we hope to be able to see you in the future to help you out on the buying or selling of your home. So
welcome to Livingston.